man hands on misery to man, this kind of negative idea. But what I really noticed about the content of this poem in terms of they fuck you up, your mom and dad, right? And everybody likes that line because everybody blames their parents for where they are in their life, right? They say, oh, it's my mom and dad's fault. If they had just been perfect people and raised me, blah, blah, blah. I just think it's a very juvenile idea. And I'm just not that interested in it anymore. I was interested in it in my 20s, to be fair. You know, I was very interested in that when I was still young, in college, thinking about these things. So at that time in my life, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, Philip Larkin's so cheekily funny in this. But now being a parent myself, I just can't, you know, I don't know how old Larkin was when he wrote this. Maybe I'll look it up. I'm looking on the Poetry Foundation right now, and they have it registered from 2001, like his collected poems, which is the book I want to go into at some point. But when was it originally published? Let me look that up. Okay, so according to Google, it says This Be the Verse from Philip Larkin is first published in August of 1971, issue of New Humanist. Oh, the Humanist. Here we go. And it was in his 1974 collection, High Windows. So, okay, 1971. So this was relatively towards the end of his life, Larkin. Very interesting. Very interesting that he wrote this towards the end of his life. That means there's a lot of resentment. And again, I don't like to get into the kind of the biographical side of things. Many listeners will know that I think that's cheap, too easy. Freud has had his way with poetry and literature and the arts for too long. I think it's disgusting. We should stop using that as a metric for critique or analysis in poetry. But this one particularly, they fuck you up, your mom and dad. It's this kind of juvenile attitude, unforgiving attitude, blaming everything else but yourself for why, you know, you're so miserable, essentially. And I think that is a sign of maturity when you can forgive your parents for their mistakes. I think that is a sign of becoming an adult. And usually that only happens when you have children yourself, in terms of being able to understand that. Let me look if Larkin. Let me look if Philip Larkin had children. No, he didn't have children. Not surprising he was so bitter towards the last 10 years of his life then, writing a poem like this. All right, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I think because, you know, this is a little unrelated, but not really. I was very nervous when leading up to this. So the whole 9 months my wife was pregnant and leading up to my daughter being born here a few weeks ago, I was very scared. I was very nervous, and I was looking for things to, you know, make myself feel better or advice and stuff. And a lot of you listeners know I'm already a fan of Jordan Peterson, and he has a lot of good advice for parents and fatherhood. And one thing he said that I think is really true, though, is that having your own children is the final stage of adulthood. Like, you don't actually become an adult until you reproduce. Like, that is the final stage of adulthood. And if you don't do that, you are in this kind of perpetual adolescence, right? And you do become quite miserable in that, because that can only give you so much. So you get bored with the world. It's another great thing he says is that children kind of reinvigorate the world for you, because you're teaching them everything that you know and showing them the things that you like, and it kind of reinvigorates them for you, instead of, you know, growing kind of bored and tired of the same old things, you know. And I think I was reaching that point in my life, which is strange to say, and it's strange to think about. Like, it really is true. And people give him a lot of shit for this, and people, you know, longtime listeners to this will know I'm a defender of Jordan Peterson, just because I think he says some stuff that I don't agree with, of course, and I think is kind of crazy, and I think he's, you know, gotten very political in the recent years. He's fully, you know, he's stopped restraining himself from being explicitly political. But, and I think that can be damaging to an intellectual's reputation. But I think that people are very bad faith about him saying things like this, where they think it's some type of sinister plot that he's saying this, where he's just trying to talk about the psychological, you know, human mind, like the reality of being human and having this kind of psychological needs and issues and all of that. And I don't want to make this whole thing about Peterson, but It really shows in a poem like this, I think, from Larkin. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. So this kind of, expecting perfection or expecting your parents to do everything right and then blaming them when they didn't, I think is just untrue. It's just a juvenile way to look at the world. And it's incredible that Larkin wrote this towards the end of his life here, because I think it's less interesting. You see people that have epiphanies as they age and gain wisdom. This seems like the opposite of that, which is, I guess the main takeaway for something like this and what I'm going to get into here is just that it does change you. Like I don't, maybe just the way I feel, like how much I've changed just in a short few weeks of being a parent, like how much it made me appreciate my own parents even more, even though I was already incredibly grateful for my parents and loved them dearly. It's just what they've done for me, how they allowed me to become who I am in all these different ways. And a lot of that includes the faults that they filled me with and some of the extra that they added just for me. So I think that is, it's a very cynical poem. And as I said, structurally, I can only say that some of it is corny, maybe cliche, like man hands on misery to man. I mean, that's a cliche, especially if you're saying that in 1971. Okay, very cliche. It deepens like a coastal shelf is... If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.